think I was in my late 20s or whatever. And I remember I had some guy make a snide comment, but the captain came on board and was like, "Hey, folks, the fueler came on board and added too much fuel, and we're gonna have to get some of it taken off and removed. We have, certain amount of bags that we're maxed out as, and we're overweight right now." The guy sitting in front of me cops an attitude, and it's like,
How does he know that we're overweight? What are we on a scale or something?
I was like, "No, boo boo." Well, hello, passengers, crew members, flight attendants, pursers, whatever. Konnichiwa, sorika, bonjour, hola. What is going on? I know what's going on. We're going to talk about my job, gate agents' jobs, pilots' jobs, what our jobs are, what we're here to do. Let's get it popping. Okay, so you heard me say, we're going to be talking about our jobs as crew members, gate agents, ramp, anybody I can think of that I interact with as a flight attendant on the needle jet. And the needle jet is something. Let me tell you, it is a narrow body airplane. It is quite tiny. And the things that passengers say that I'm quite used to at this point, but like, hey, if you board a needle jet, aka the Embraer 145, I'm pretty much going to ignore you. If you say, "Oh, this is a tiny plane," or "Oh my God," or whatever, any reference to it being small or tiny, like I hear this every flight, every day, at least 50% of the passengers. So I am completely
numb to it.
I just don't have a response for you. I really don't. And I won't. Unless you get really rude or crazy or say something off the chain or whatever. But other than that, I'm just going to look at you and smile and be like, "Just keep it rolling. You need help finding your seat? Do you know what your seat is on that ticket? Whatever. Just keep it rolling." But anyways, back to our jobs. And basically, we are just doing our jobs. In the airline industry, there are a lot of regulations, federal aviation regulations, kinds of stuff we have to abide by and do. So when you meet that gate agent, at the ticket counter, you meet the ticket counter agent and you're checking in, they're going to ask you all kinds of questions, and it is your job to do so. Especially things about like lithium batteries and medication and things like that. When you're checking your big roller board, that's not a carry-on. They have to ask you those things because if you have like medication in there that you need and you're checking it and it goes in the cargo, but you need it during the flight, that makes no sense. Use your head. All right. So when they ask you stuff like that, they want you to take that prescription medication or your inhaler or whatever you got in that checked baggage. They want you to take it out and keep it on your person. Those things are small enough for you to take on the aircraft. That's why they're asking you that. And the lithium batteries thing, okay, look. If you come on board my aircraft with a laptop that has a lithium battery in it, or any other thing, like your cell phone, things like that, and it heats up and catches on fire, I have tools in the cabin to put those things out. I have 2 fire extinguishers on board, 2 PBEs on board, and a PBE is a portable breathing equipment. That's something I put over my head so I can fight the fire, but I'm not breathing in the flames and the exhausts and all that stuff. It lasts only about 15 minutes, okay? But 15 minutes is enough. Like I said, if you have those type of lithium batteries and they're in the cabin with you, I can put those things out. I have like 12 to 15 bottles of water, seltzer, all kinds of stuff. I've got a pouch that's specific for lithium fires. I put that phone or whatever it is that caught on fire, I shove it in there with some water, keeps that sucker cool, keeps it out. Okay? But when you have like a laptop or something, some kind of lithium batteries in your check baggage, that's a whole other ball game. If they get a notification that there's a fire in the cargo, then we have to do manual decompression and all this stuff and make an emergency landing. That's all craziness. We don't want that to happen. That's why we want you to bring those damn things in the cabin with you. Okay? It's very important. It is safety. It really, really is. That's the ticket agent doing their job. And they're doing their jobs. The gate agent is going to let you know how things roll. Different aircraft require different things. Like when you're flying regional jets, when you're flying like Delta Connection or American Eagle, and let's not forget United Express. Other like express carriers under the larger airline, they have different cabin rules. Now, your carry-on that you may bring on a 737 or a 757, that's fine. You can actually bring those in the cabin, put them in the overhead. But on the needle jet, my needle jet, the 145, the Embraer 145, or even the Embraer 140, you cannot bring those on board. Okay, but they'll still remain your carry-on. But what we do is put it in the cargo. We get to the destination. We bring it out of the cargo. We bring those bags out first, your carry-ons, quotations. And we bring them in the jet bridge for you. You grab that before you go in a terminal. And then when you get on your 737 or Airbus 321 or 757, or whatever larger aircraft you get on, wide body, then you can carry that physically with you in the cabin and put them in those overheads. If you try to put them on our overheads, more than likely you're going to break them. We have to take maintenance delay. And some of them, you're just not going to get it in the overhead, period. You're just going to embarrass yourself, basically. So, the gate agent at the gate makes that announcement, lets you know, like, hey, this is how it is about these carry-ons. They don't fit on this small regional jet, but we still let you have it as a carry-on. We just put it in the cargo for you, bring it right out of the cargo, and you take it with you. Now, me and the flight attendant, we have our jobs to do. We have required announcements we have to make. We have required briefings that we have to do, such as the emergency exit row. Now, I know people sit there and they get annoyed or whatever. Guess what? I have to do it. I could have the FAA on board watching me, and if I don't do it, they can fine me if they want to. I can get like up to $1,000 fine as an individual flight attendant for not doing that required briefing. Now, I have had situations where I've done the briefing, and most people are going to say yes or say some stupid, smart, little snide comment or answer. But I have occasionally had people that were like, hey, I can't sit here. I have a heart condition or whatever. Now, you're not required to tell me whatever your reasoning is that you can't sit there. No passenger is required to tell me that. And I, as a flight attendant or any flight attendant, shouldn't be asking you those questions. We just take the answer like, no, you're not able to sit there, and we move you somewhere else or get somebody to switch with you or whatever. But there are people that have heart conditions or whatever else going on with them physically, or they just a nervous person. They don't want that responsibility. So we're required to ask those things. There are seating requirements in the exit row, such as you have to be at least 15 years old. You can't sit there if you're an adult with a baby on your lap. That's a no-no. No children at all can sit in that exit row. Things like that. Okay? People with certain disabilities can't sit there because the whole purpose of being in the exit row or that exit, having somebody able-bodied there, is so they can open that exit, throw it out, get it open, and help people, assist people off. So there are certain restraints to that emergency exit row. And I have to visually check that, make sure, you're not sitting there with kids and things like that. You can't sit there with your pets either, because you're going to be worrying about your pet in an emergency, not trying to get that door open. So all those are no-nos, for example. Now, your pilots, they have things they need to do. They need to get the weather, check the radar, get a flight release from dispatch, the captain to sign off, and the first officer that the airplane is okay, certified, ready to go. Sometimes you may see that first officer, or sometimes the captain may do it every now and again, but usually it's the first officer, do a airplane walk around. They walk around the plane, checking it. They're required to do that every single flight, because things could happen on the way there. They could strike some birds, and they could see blood and stuff in the engine and things like that. All those things have to be reported. Any kind of dents or anything in the aircraft, they have to check that stuff out, clear that out, make sure that's okay. All those things that shouldn't be there. They're looking for any leak, things like that. Every time you fly, before every flight, there is a visual walk around the aircraft. Most of the time, it is the first officer that does the walk around, but occasionally there's a captain that might want to go out there and do it just because he hasn't done it in a while, or he's just that much of a he or she is that much of a control freak. But anyways, they have required things they need to do. They have to do checklists up front every flight, checking the equipment, checking the indicators, things like that. So just think about that before you pop your head in and make some little weirdo snide comment. Because sometimes, a lot of the times on the ERJ, at least on our needle jet, that door is open as passengers board. It's not very much room, so it's going to be open. And I see a lot of people pop their head in and say weirdo stuff. Most people are just saying hello to the pilots, which is cool. Occasionally, like they might be doing their checklist at that moment. So just think about that when you board. But they have their requirements they need to do. Ramp personnel, they have their requirements, what they need to do. Certain baggage that they have to check. Make sure it gets listed. The count has to be right on the bags that we have when they send their information to the pilots. There are weight limitations. These things are counted, such as how many passengers we have on board, how many passengers are considered children, and that's under the age of 13, because their weight is counted different. It is an average, but passenger weight is counted. How many bags we have on our counted. If you have really big bags, they count those double. It's heavy. Things like that. How much fuel we have on board, that gets counted in the weight. And people are like, well, it is an airplane. It's designed to be full and take da-da-da-da. Well, there are some limitations, dude. That when they design these aircraft, there is a maximum weight that you can't top over for the damn thing to get in the air. I mean, it does have to get in the air at a certain point. You just can't keep piling on and piling on. Each aircraft has a maximum weight that it can't go above in order for it to do what it's designed properly to do. So, and the only reason I mention this was, I don't know, I think I was in my late 20s or whatever, and I remember I had some guy make a snide comment, but the past captain came on board and was like, hey, folks, the fueler came on board and added too much fuel, and we're going to have to get some of it taken off and removed. We have, certain amount of bags that we're maxed out as, and we're overweight right now. That's the key word that he used in his announcement, that we were overweight. So the guy sitting in front of me cops an attitude, and it's like,
How does he know that we're overweight? What are we on a scale or something?
I was like, no, boo-boo. It's all calculated in to the release. It's all calculated in and how they have to measure how much weight we have on board. There's an average for each passenger, each adult, and an average for each child that's on board. And the fuel is counted. The fuel is like, 3,000 pounds, 1,000 pounds of fuel. All that stuff is tabulated in the computers. There are gauges and things like that. So we know how much fuel is on board when they add it. We have to count each bag. There's an average weight that for each bag. Like I said, it could be some duffel bags, whatever. They count them as doubles or whatever. We're not making this stuff up. But his attitude and the look on his face as if we're just making crap up. Like, when you're that ignorant, you're just a layman, just an average passenger. It's like, we know what we're doing. They are trained. These aircraft are designed by Boeing, Embraer, Airbus, whatever. They design it with specifications, limitations, what the maximum is, how fast it goes, things like that. It's not just made up in the sky. And there are weight limitations. And weight is counted. You are counted. We know how many people on board. We know how many bags we got in the back. We know how much fuel we have on. All those things are calculated in the weight. So that's why sometimes they add sandbags to the back, or we call it ballast. And there's also ballast. These black rubber weight tablets, whatever you want to call them. It's the only way I can describe them. But ballast, or sometimes you see sandbags, they'll add that to add weight to balance the aircraft so we can take off in a safe manner. So those things, the average Joe knows nothing about, doesn't have a clue, because you're not a pilot or an aviation. You know what the hell you're talking about. But the fact, his attitude was just, ugh. And yes, I am just a flight attendant, but I know a little bit more than you because I hang out with pilots. So, and I hear this stuff all the time. We got to add more ballast. So they added too much fuel. So our maximum weight is this. And we went over by this. So the fueler has to come back and take off 1,000 pounds or something like that. I remember one time we were in Connecticut and the fueler gave us like an extra, I don't know what it was, 2,000 pounds or something, because he was supposed to put that 2,000 on a Delta flight on a 737 or something, and he accidentally put it on our plane. So we had to wait for this sucker for like an hour and some change because he went home and took a nap or whatever the deal was to come back and remove that extra fuel so we could get out of there safely. Okay, these are things that the layman or laywoman knows nothing about. So how dare you question us? Well, question us in that manner. I understand don't know. So there's some people ask me things out of curiosity and want to know. I have no problem with that. But when you come at me with an attitude as if, I don't know, like we don't know what we're talking about or we're just making things up, that pisses me off. It really does. It really does. So as I was saying earlier, ramp has a responsibility. They have to be truthful about how many bags are on board, what kind of cargo we have in the back, if we have pets in the back. They're also looking at those bags, those rollerboards that have the lithium battery chargers attached. They make sure that those don't go on the cargo. If they see that, they're going to pull it out and they're going to bring it to us and be like, who does this belong to in the cabin? We're not putting your chargers with lithium batteries in the back of our cargo bin. It ain't happening. Now, I know that the makers of some of these bags, supposedly, I guess they, before they started designing those bags, they went to the major airlines and was like, hey, would this be okay? And I guess they told them, yeah. But somewhere down the line later, most of the majors was like, hell to the no. Y'all can't be putting them lithium chargers in the back of our plane. And consequently, after that, at least one or two of those manufacturers basically got their lawyers. They got lawyered up, and they had sued the airlines, or at least the majors. Now, I don't know what became of that lawsuit. I didn't keep up with that. I just had read somewhere that they were suing them because, like I said, they came to them beforehand before they designed them and said, is this going to be okay on your planes? And they told them, yeah. So, but that is the deal. If you have a charger attached to your rollerboard, to your suitcase, you better remove it. Better be removable, because if it's not, you're gonna have some issues. Most of them that I've seen in their designs, they are removable. Most of them are. So, but they're in a nutshell those basic for airline employees. That's their job. That's what we have to do. And we have to follow these federal aviation regulations. Now, you also have your training department at any airline, really. But at our regional airline, we have a training department, of course, as you would have at any airline, whether it's regional or major. We all have training departments because once you have your initial hire training, that is not the end of your training. It continues on. It gets renewed. Things change in this industry. Things change in the aviation industry all the time. And when I say all the time, I mean all the time. So much that my head spins. But yes, we have a training department that we continually engage with on an annual basis. It's called recurrent training. And it's not just for pilots, and it's not just for flight attendants. It's also for mechanics. They have to go through that training as well. Now, I'm not for sure about, gauges and things like that and ramp. But definitely your mechanics, your pilots, and your flight attendants, because there are safety issues at hand. And as a flight attendant, I'm going to tell you now, I have had 2 to 3, emergencies in my past. But do I go through an emergency every day, every year? Hell to the no. And if I did, I don't know how long I'd be working in this industry. But it's always a just in case. So since we don't have emergencies on a daily basis, yearly, or even every 5 years, which that's a good thing, we still have to practice a just in case. So that's why we have recurrent training where we go through basics of first aid, CPR, how to put out a fire if you have one in a cabin. Also, we will do evacuation drills should we have to evacuate in an emergency. And there's different scenarios, let's say smoke in the cabin or a water, we call it a ditching when you land in the water, things like that. So we go over those things, helpful things. There's also other scenarios. If you have an incapacitated flight attendant, what should you do? Incapacitated pilot, what would we do in that scenario? And things like that. So training continues on throughout the industry on an annual basis, sometimes biannually. And that's to ensure that our training is up to date and kept fresh. Because there are a lot of scenarios that I don't deal with on a daily basis as long as things go smoothly. And let's not forget about the airline dispatcher. They have a very, very important role, and I want to make sure I mention them before I end this podcast. So you have your airline dispatcher. They're responsible for like any changes that occurs, like and airplane swaps and things like that. Don't get me started on airplane swaps. Some of them are just unnecessary, and they can add to our exhaustion throughout the day. I have one captain that won't tolerate unnecessarily airplane swaps. He won't stand for it. He'll be like, hey, why are we swapping this aircraft? And if the dispatcher doesn't give him a good enough reason, a good enough reason would be, well, we need this airplane to go to the maintenance base, so that's why we have you take that one, or that one is don't have any pressurization and you're going on a shorter route, so we need you to take that one, or whatever it is. There has to be something legit to this particular captain, and if it's not legit to him, he's like, we're not doing it. That's an unnecessary swap. He's not having it. That's why I like flying with him. Because, yes, that can drain us. Swapping airplanes. And then we only have 4 legs for that day. And we have to swap to like 2, 3 different aircraft. You get the hell out of here with the nonsense. But anyway, there can also, if, I don't know if those of you that have been on a flight where you were supposed to go somewhere and then the plane had to divert because the weather was so bad and you couldn't get into that couldn't get into that airport. So your dispatcher will be responsible for having alternate airports just in case the weather gets so bad that you can't get into your original destination. They draw up those plans for that. They'll be like, you'll have these 2 alternates. So like, for example, if you're supposed to go to Wisconsin, where did we go? Where did we used to go in Wisconsin? Not Madison. Well, we do go to Madison. Let's say you are supposed to go to Madison, Wisconsin. Your alternate would be either Milwaukee or Chicago O'Hare if you couldn't get it into Madison because the weather's so bad. So things like that for diversions. They draw up those plans for that and coordinate with the pilots for things like that. Cancellations, dispatch will handle those things. The weather may be so bad that they know that if they send these flights out, they're not going to end up there, and their planes are going to be scattered all over the place. So they'll just go ahead and just cancel that stuff, so that at least they have these airplanes back in their bases whenever they need to resume again once the weather dies down. Okay? Things like that. They take care of any delays. They make the decisions whether the flights are going to, like I said, be canceled or delayed. Sometimes I've taken a delay to the very next day. It wasn't technically a cancellation. We were supposed to go somewhere at, 8 o'clock at night. We had some kind of maintenance issue. They took care of it overnight and resumed the flight the next morning. Now, that's very rare, but it happens. But your dispatcher takes care of things like that. Now, most airports have automated flight plans, but, your aircraft dispatcher, they can override those things. Like I said, your dispatcher can suggest alternative actions, and they're going to monitor all the flights. Now, they use computer systems for these things, looking at the altitudes and the flight calculations. And I was reading this one article that said a lot of the dispatchers have as much knowledge, if not more, than some pilots do. Now, that supposedly allows them to come up with flight plans that are the best choice for weather conditions. If they have mechanical issues and other problems that may arise. And like I said, I had that captain that won't tolerate unscheduled swaps. So they have to be prepared for any changes that go on. And these things are not set in stone. Things can be changed throughout the day. It depends on what's going on with the weather. If there's some kind of security breach, anything like that. Like, unfortunately, I have to mention 9/11. Like, that was a dispatcher nightmare. That was a nightmare for the whole country, the whole world. But as far as, like, in aviation goes, that was craziness. So they have to be able to assess the situation and be able to make changes as necessary to the flight plans, to how we're scheduled, if we need to take different aircraft, because maybe the one that we were supposed to take has a mechanical issue. Now they're going to find us another aircraft that's, just sitting there that was supposed to terminate. Now we're going to take it and fly it to where we need to go. They do things like that. Also, they schedule our crew meals. If we have crew meals, because crew meal, that's a whole nother story. But if we need food as crew members and we haven't been able to get to food because we've been flying the aircraft around, taking people around. Yeah, we got to eat too. We have to fuel our bodies. We're human beings. So sometimes we have crew meals that are unscheduled and we need to get to those crew meals so we can eat. And dispatch takes care of those things too. And along with dispatchers, communication is key. Good communication. Good communication. And being able to get along with people too. We don't see the dispatcher face to face. That is just done via phone. Or they use the communication systems up there in the flight deck. But, professionalism and being pleasant and things go a long way. I've heard people get snippy. I've heard some pilots get snippy with the dispatcher. I heard the dispatcher get snippy with the pilots. We had one snippy nut. We called her the crew meal Nazi. Like, there were times when we needed a crew meal because we flew for so long without eating. And she just did not want to give them to us. So that was her nickname, the crew meal Nazi. Yeah, sorry for using. Please don't get triggered by Nazi, but I didn't come up with that nickname. That's what they would call her. But yes, the dispatcher is very important. They have a very important job, and yes, they are needed. And apparently, there is a shortage, I believe, in airline dispatchers. So if you want to get on that, get on it. Do the research. Look it up. Find out what you need to do. Actually, I believe at my airline, they're actually paying to send people to train to be airline dispatchers. So I'm not going to mention my airline. You have to figure that out. Well, I don't want you to figure it out, really. But you figure out how to get there. Maybe I'll put that in the comment section. How to become an airline dispatcher. Maybe a good career change for you. For some of you out there. Or if you want to start a career. For some of you out there. So there it is in a nutshell. I talked about gate agents, ramp, pilots, flight attendants, airline dispatchers. More to come in the next podcast. So hit me up if you're interested in certain subjects you want me to talk about. Hit me up at that email. That's myneedlejet@aol.com. For any suggestions, check out the blog, myneedlejet.com. Hit me up. This is Regina. Peace. Hey guys, just real quick, if you like this podcast, don't forget to subscribe and shoot me an email.